Thousands of people in our state have been crying out for justice. And these footsteps in the streets, I think and I hope, are footsteps in history that can provoke us in taking big strides to fight against the systemic racism that has afflicted our communities for decades. To the protesters, I want you to know this. I hear you. Black lives matter. And because of many of these protests, many people across the country are starting to understand the real meaning of that term. This is a moment unlike anything we've seen. It's a moment to do things differently, to do them better, and to do them with a real commitment to change. On Friday, I pledged that our state patrol will conduct a review of the investigation of the death of Manny Ellis in Tacoma. And it will do an independent investigation of anything that needs investigating after that review. It has to get to the bottom of every single piece of evidence that has a bearing on that loss, and it will prepare that report as soon as it can. We need to make sure this is a fair, just, and thorough examination. Community members, family members deserve this, as we know. And the state deserves it as well. At that point, this information will be forwarded to Bob Ferguson, who, as Attorney General, I will ask him at the appropriate moment to conduct his own decision to determine what, if any, prosecutorial action should be taken by the Attorney General. Around the state, communities are demanding change at every level of our government. And leaders cannot just reject racist ideas. They're not asking just for vague promises. We need action, we need policies, and we need them as rapidly as possible. In the last 2 weeks, I've been in many discussions with members of the Black Lives Matter movement in King County, the Legislators' Black Caucus, the members of Color Caucus, family members of those who've lost loved ones, and Tacoma community leaders. And I know that we have to rethink policing and public safety in Washington State. And we've got to make sure that those discussions are not in a vacuum. To that end, I will be convening a diverse group of Black leaders and representatives of other marginalized communities, as well as representatives of law enforcement, to develop proposals to submit to the legislature. My hope is to collaborate with this group to write meaningful legislation in our state. Now, there are many ideas that I know will be considered, but I want to talk about 3 things that certainly need to be action items. First, we need an independent investigative and prosecutorial process for cases of alleged police misconduct, resulting in death or serious harm to citizens. This would involve the creation of a state investigative unit that is totally separate from any other law enforcement entity geographically in the state. Second, we need to rethink the use of police force and look more broadly at police tactics. Clearly, this means that there has to be a restriction on the use of chokeholds. Third, we need to create a legally enforceable obligation that law enforcement officers must report misconduct by their fellow officers. Now, we know that much more is needed. And what I mean by that is that the tenor of these moments gives us an opportunity, I believe, to take additional steps to the larger efforts in addition to police misconduct issues. Police misconduct may be the byproduct of institutional racism, but fixing that alone will not solve the underlying problems that bedevil us, of inequity in education, inequity in healthcare, in economic inequities that defy imagination. All of these things have to be on the table for action, and I look forward to working with legislators in the community to make sure that that happens. We know that people in authority have a responsibility both to listen and to take action. So we're bringing people to the table to be proactive in these discussions, because we know that the responsibility to change things ultimately rests on those who actually have authority to actually take action